Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while we're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, it just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Very well, Mark. I'm doing good. How are you getting on?
Not bad at all, Lewis. I have some bad news for you, though.
Oh, yeah?
I've not played Bowser's Fury on Super Mario 3D World. I'm
But
sorry,
you
I know
promised.
I've let the whole side down. But I have to blame Persona 5.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going away. I thought I was in the home stretch. It's 20 hours later. I'm over 100 hours now. Still not finished. I've still got stuff to do. I thought I was far closer to the end than I actually was. I was trying to power through the game and I was like, no, I'll definitely have this finished by the next time we record the podcast. Fucking nope. Still going.
Dear.
Still don't really know how long I've got left. Still loving it, but yeah, sorry.
Have you checked a guide or anything to see how much is kind of roughly left, or are you just playing blind?
I was sort of trying to stay away from guides.
Yeah.
I have sort of looked at guides a little bit now to give me a sense of how long there is left. But I'd done this before as well, and it sort of obviously got something wrong in my head because I thought that the last palace that I'd done was the last palace, but it's not. Like, a palace is just a dungeon in this game. I think I still had actually quite a bit to go when I said I was in the home stretch last week, but I am now in the home stretch, I believe. I've done a little bit of looking at a guide and I now believe I'm actually in the home stretch.
You better be confident. You can't come back next week and say you've lied about that as well.
Well, I might not have finished it next week because I'm definitely going to play Bowser's Fury, and I'm probably going to try and finish 3D World as well next week.
Oh, nice.
Because I've had a lot of Persona 5 this week, man. A lot of it. And sometimes it's just nice to relax with some Super Mario and the Mushroom Kingdom, and it's all nice and lovely. But yeah, still going. That's how my week's been. How are you doing?
Well, I mean, as long as you're still enjoying it, I quite like that, having Mario to bounce off to. I think Mario's, when I was playing Odyssey, it was quite often like that as well. You would play a different game for a couple of hours beforehand, and then, like, Mario Odyssey was your, I'm going to chill out now game, It's so low stakes, low energy, but really good.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm now at the stage in 3D World as well where some of the levels are absolutely fucking excruciating. Like, punch yourself in the face, excruciating. But it is just great. Like, some of the platforming obviously does get more challenging, as do all Mario games as they continue onward, but it's still really good. It's a really great game. As you said, it's just chill vibes a lot of the time, apart from when you want to punch yourself in the face. But Lewis, what have you been playing?
Well, Mark, just more Blasphemous for me, really. I've not felt like I had a ton of gaming time this week, but I've just been kind of slowly clearing up Blasphemous. Last week I think I said I was about halfway. I'm probably only a little bit further along than that now. I've reached that point that you might recognise in a Metroidvania, Mark, where something kind of just clicks and you're better at it. And things are just working. And so obviously,
I know it well, Liz. I know it well.
This particular Metroidvania has a particular kind of Dark Souls-y element to it. It's got quite, at times, challenging combat, and there's a decent penalty for dying. You have to basically retrace your steps and find a guilt fragment, as it's called in this game, which if you don't recover those, you don't get as much fervor, which is essentially your magic abilities and some of your other skills like that. So, typically, like a Dark Souls game, you have to go deal with the thing that killed you, recover something that was lost. I've reached the point now where none of that feels particularly challenging and actually quite enjoyable. When, for instance, I just unlocked a new area and did a little bit of backtracking and stuff before I jumped into it. And in that area I've died plenty of times and I get sent back to the start of it, but I completely understand what the run is going to be each time. I'm going from here to here. I know exactly what the puzzles are going to be, what the challenges are going to be, and sometimes I'll fail at that and just have to come and do it again. But the combat side of it has become I don't want to say easy because it isn't easy as such, but as I was saying, like, I've just found the groove. I just know what I'm supposed to be doing and when I'm supposed to be doing it.
Definitely. It's a nice moment to get at.
It definitely is. Like, I think that is a thing about Metroidvanias that I was often quite hesitant about, which is, that progress can feel difficult and that you might enter areas time and again that you can't actually get through, and that can be frustrating. But now that I'm playing them more and more, obviously with Hollow Knight being this big provocateur in terms of playing games like this more, like, they absolutely do. They have a moment. It's never like or for me at least, it's never necessarily a moment where you like unlock a thing or there's some big story moment, like in traditional games where like suddenly you're OP'd because a thing happened. In these games, it's just kind of like all of a sudden the timing just clicks, you understand the enemies you're facing, you lose that fear. I remember talking about that to you loads on and off there actually around Hollow Knight.
I think losing the fear is a big thing.
It's such a huge thing of just being like, it doesn't actually matter if I die here. Like, we've spoken about this before, Mark, obviously, in terms of seeing these as like runs, almost like in a roguelike way. Like, this is just the next run that you have to do, see how far you get, see what you learn, start again. And as soon as you kind of key into that, it's really good. And so yeah, Blasphemous overall, I'm enjoying it. It's not groundbreaking, it's not world beating at all. It's super weird. The environments and the level design are quite good fun. Some of the challenges and the combat have been difficult, but for me it's just like a pretty solid good game, and if you're into Metroidvanias, it's one worth picking up. That's kind of it. I've still been noodling away at Hitman. I'm not going to say that every week because, like Mario for you, Hitman has become it's 11 o'clock at night, I want to play something for an hour, I just boot up a new level and try some stuff out. So still having tons of fun with that, and still would highly recommend anyone check it out that has been thinking about it. It's obviously been out a wee while now, it might be coming a bit cheaper. If you love stealth games, if you love just messing about in big environments, Hitman is so much fun.
Nice one, man. That sounds good. I will be reminding you of this moment and losing the fear and finding the groove whenever you come round to playing Bloodborne, just FYI. I will be reminding you of that on a near daily basis, I suspect, when you're slamming your head against the wall trying to progress.
Yeah, definitely. I'll need reminding, that's for sure. But I'm hoping that playing more of this type of game is, putting something into my brain that will come in useful when I start to tackle Bloodborne.
It absolutely is, man. I have to say, it was invaluable for me, or certainly Hollow Knight was, when it came to playing those types of games. It was just a certain mentality you have to get in. You have to understand you're going to be shit for a while, and then you're going to find the groove, everything's going to click, and you're going to be off to the races,
Exactly.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. Bloomberg, not some Twitter leaker or something like that. Bloomberg has reported that the Switch Pro is real and that Nintendo are looking to launch it in the holiday period this year, so almost certainly before Christmas. And as you can imagine, I just about shit my pants with joy when I read this.
Delightful.
Bloomberg reported that the Switch will have a 720p OLED screen. OLED uses much less battery life than the Switch's current LCD screen, so that should translate to longer play times. However, we are also hoping that the Switch Pro will be more powerful as well, so I would tamper your expectations on just how much additional playtime you're going to get from this because of the much more energy efficient screen. There was rumblings on the internet that it was a bit disappointing that the screen wasn't at least 1080p, and to be honest with you, I was one of those people initially. I very much was suspecting that the screen would be 1080p whenever the Switch Pro came out. However, with even a modicum of research, to be completely honest with you, the benefits of having a 1080p screen that close to your face when you're holding the Switch in handheld mode is basically negligible, and it would also have cost more money, not just for Nintendo but for us as well whenever it eventually comes out and we as consumers get to buy it. It will also have a significantly higher drain on the battery life than the 720p screen, and thus your handheld gaming time would have been fairly drastically cut, it seems. So I am actually pretty glad that Nintendo aren't going for a better resolution and more pixels, because it doesn't look as if that would have made much of a difference anyway, and are instead increasing the quality of those pixels by quite a bit by going for an OLED screen, which, if you don't know, it just has far better colours in terms of true colours and way better blacks and things like that. It's just a much better screen. The screen will also be larger as well. It will be 7 inches, which is bigger than the current Switch's 6.5 inches and the Switch Lite's 5.5 inches. It's also been confirmed by Bloomberg that the Pro will have a thinner bezel, which, as I'm looking at my Switch here right now, the bezel is absolutely enormous. I did actually quickly measure the current screen area of the Switch, and it can accommodate a 7-inch screen without increasing the overall dimensions of the Switch, which I think could be important for Joy-Con compatibility, basically. E.g., the old Joy-Cons for the standard Switch will still fit on the Switch Pro. Although, as we were joking about before we started the podcast, Lewis, it would be very Nintendo to make us buy Joy-Con Pros for our Switch Pro, you know? When in docked, the Switch will also output to your TV at a glorious 4K, which I assume involves some upscale trickery of some description. While this is good news and obviously keeping in line with TV standards and future-proofing a bit, Bloomberg also notes that there has been a long-standing issue with developers apparently having to deal with the 720p resolution on the handheld and the 1080p of the TV output of the Switch as it is just now, and that problem could be getting even worse, potentially 4 times worse with 4K. However, overall, this is very good news. I am very pleased about it. This should come as a surprise to no one, but Lewis, generally speaking, you have been less excited, shall we say, about the prospect of a Switch Pro. Does this move the needle for you in any capacity?
That's a tough question, yeah. It's not that I'm disinterested in it at all. I guess I've just needed a bit more convincing as to why I would need to upgrade my Switch, so to speak. And let's be clear, I mean, part of that is just that I don't love being asked to spend money on a console again if there's no real necessity to do so. But in saying all that, it sounds to me like Nintendo are making, if this is true, and as you were kind of alluding to, like the fact that we're getting this from a proper news site is a bit more indication. I mean, it's definitely real, right? The Switch Pro, there's just no way that it's not real, right? So
the term "no smoke without fire," I mean, we can see the fucking flames. Yeah, here, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's definitely here.
If we take all this to be true, or as close to true as possible, it feels like Nintendo have made good decisions. They're thinking about it properly. And yeah, in some senses, the thing that would tempt me to upgrade a Switch or buy a Switch Pro is if it can play better or bigger games or play existing games in a better way. To me, like, the screen quality is less important to that. But things like the battery life and the actual power under the hood could be the things that move the needle there. Just to take one really obvious example, but if Breath of the Wild 2 is going to play substantially better or even have to cut out certain things on the current Switch versions, then yeah, I would upgrade for that reason. If really all I was getting was a better screen or 4K output, then I probably wouldn't bother, you know?
Well, to be honest with you, I would agree in that capacity. If this was all we were getting, then I wouldn't be very excited to upgrade. However, I think what you said there was quite right, and I think that this is indicative of Nintendo hopefully making good decisions here. And if they continue to make good decisions under the hood, e.g. better processors and whatever, so that we can get a better output in general from the Switch, better graphics, less pop-in Breath of the Wild, which was infuriating to me when I was playing it, despite how good the game is, then yeah, 100%, that is what I'm actually after. If this was all we were getting, I wouldn't be very excited to upgrade either, to be honest. But I'm hoping that this is indicative of bigger and better things from the Switch Pro that will make it worth dropping what I'm sure will be a fair bit of change, you know what I mean, on a Switch again.
Yeah, absolutely there. Like, you can see that Nintendo will price this quite highly. If it's going to drop right before Christmas, they're going to want to make some major sales on it. And if it extends the life of the Switch ecosystem, for want of a better word, then I think it's good. They just still have some work to do to convince me, and I suspect other people like me, that it's absolutely necessary at this point, particularly for people who don't own a PS4 or a PS5 or an Xbox One or an Xbox Series X. They're going to want that Switch Pro to be able to do things that the current models can't do. And so that's the information I'm waiting for, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I would largely agree, to be honest with you. That is going to be the real difference here. What games can it play and how well can it play them? That's what's really going to matter. But as I said, I am hoping that the choices that they are making here with the screen is indicative of good choices that they are making across a Pro model. Yeah. So, fingers crossed. Please give it to me. Alright, news item number 2. This week, the EU Commission has approved Microsoft's $7.5 billion takeover of ZeniMax Media, meaning that Bethesda is now officially an Xbox studio, not that it was ever in any doubt, Lewis. The European Commission thing was just the last hurdle they had to get over, and quite frankly, they cleared it with ease, it looks like. This is undoubtedly the most significant acquisition in recent gaming history, maybe ever, arguably. However, much of it is still unclear with regards to how the deal will actually be affecting gamers, but according to VentureBeat, Microsoft will be holding a video press conference on Thursday, which annoyingly is when this podcast is due to come out, so you, dear listeners, will more than likely know additional information that we will not. But we hope we get answers to at least some of the burning questions around this deal. I would think it would be pretty unlikely that Xbox or Bethesda will be discussing individual projects. Basically, I wouldn't be expecting anything about Starfield or Elder Scrolls or anything like that. But we may finally get confirmation of what Bethesda games are coming to Games Pass and when, and what future Bethesda games will be coming to Games Pass, and whether or not they'll be coming day and date like the other Xbox studios. I strongly suspect they will be, but it'll be very good to have that confirmation. And Lewis, dare I say, perhaps they confirm console exclusivity on Xbox, but I'm a bit tepid on that one personally. Not because I don't think it will happen, I just don't think they're going to announce it. As an aside, VentureBeat also said that Xbox and Bethesda are preparing announcements around E3 and will hold separate presentations, which goes totally against everything I've been saying for the last few weeks, Liz. It's good to admit when you're wrong, children. I very much thought that because Bethesda was now part of Xbox, they would have wanted to have done one big grand presentation, the two of them, as one sort of united front. However, the article does say that Xbox could look to do back-to-back presentations as a sort of, quotes, 1-2 punch, which honestly to me is basically tantamount to one presentation, but let's not split hairs here. They're presenting themselves still as Xbox and Bethesda, so I think for E3, actually, that is really good news. However, Lewis, on the subject of exclusivity, and I suppose generally around the acquisition, Phil Spencer has said this on the Xbox blog.
This is the next step in building an industry-leading first-party studios team, a commitment we have to our Xbox community. With the addition of the Bethesda creative teams, gamers should know that Xbox consoles, PC and Game Pass will be the best place to experience new Bethesda games, including some new titles in the future that will be exclusive to Xbox and PC players. As we previously shared, it's vitally important that Bethesda continues making games the way it always has. We look forward to empowering Bethesda's creative teams to reach even more players around the world, helping make future Bethesda titles the biggest and most popular games in their history. Xbox and Bethesda have long shared a common vision for the future of gaming. Both as fans and as creators, Bethesda understands the potential of Xbox Game Pass.
So, Lewis, some new titles in the future will be exclusive to Xbox and PC. Some being a very important word there, I think, Lewis.
A very important word, yeah. A load-bearing word, I would say.
Thoughts?
Yeah, thoughts, man. I feel a little vindicated here, to be honest, that some of what I have been predicting would come to pass, which is that it would...
So you think they're being real about this?
I mean...
Oh, we have very different takes on this.
Let's dive into that. My take basically from this is, I have no reason to doubt what they're saying here, really. I think the word some is doing, as we were saying, doing a lot of work. I think that what this means is that some of their major games, I think particularly legacy games, will not be removed from other consoles. I think we've agreed on that in the past. Things that are already
I would agree with that.
Places.
I don't think that they're taking Doom Eternal off PlayStation.
No,
I don't think that's happening.
I can't imagine any business reason to do that at all. But also, I think that it probably hints that certain games will remain across multiple platforms, whether that's just the Switch, whether that also includes PlayStation. I think that remains to be seen. It's thrown some spanners into my thinking a little bit, because I guess up till now I've been imagining that certain games would be exclusive and they would probably be slightly smaller titles, but that the huge, if we think of their tentpole titles as being kind of Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and maybe Starfield going forward, that they would be cross-platform. And I do still wonder about that, but it's also made me think, well, actually, is this more about player bases? And it's that, for instance, if Starfield ends up being a fully online multiplayer game, you're going to want that on as many systems as possible because you want a huge concurrent player base. But yeah, it all remains to be seen. I think for months I have been saying I don't believe that they're going to go fully exclusive, and this is, to me, is what this says. But you seem like you're disagreeing or doubting that they mean it, so tell me more.
To me, I've almost read this entirely the opposite way, I think. I think that when they say some titles, I think that it will be like, we might throw you a bone here and there, but by and large, these are going to be exclusive. That is sort of what my reading was for this. It's sort of keeping the door agonisingly open, but very much mostly shut, is what I would say. For example, I am still very much in the camp that when Elder Scrolls 6, Starfield, which is very likely to be at least announced this year, a lot of rumours are saying, the next Fallout game, the next Doom game, quite genuinely, I think that they are all going to be Xbox exclusives for at least a year. At least a year. But quite genuinely, I think it's almost more likely that they will be entirely Xbox exclusive. Again, I don't know why you go out and you spend $7.5 billion on all these studios so that you can have this amazing first-party lineup to fill the pockets of the PlayStation shareholders by releasing your games over there. You know, you want that to drive fucking Games Pass. I mean, that's really what this is about, right? It's so that you can add an absolutely gigantic back catalogue to Game Pass. You can absolutely bolster your first-party lineup and sell people on Games Pass because you can get the new Fallout, the new Doom, the new Starfield when it comes out, new Elder Scrolls, all this stuff from Bethesda, whatever Arcane ends up working on next, Wolfenstein, you know, all of these games will be there day and date with your Games Pass subscription. And I think that, I mean, really that's what it's all about. And you can also play every legacy Fallout and Doom and even back to all the Wolfenstein, like everything that they own can be there now. And you could have made the Games Pass library just overnight just even more crazily good than it already was, you know?
I don't necessarily disagree with any of that, because I think genuinely that the model will basically be first and best on Game Pass. I think that periods of console exclusivity are pretty much certain, right? Like, I think that, you know, when Fallout 5 comes out, it will be on... Well, I think almost certainly it will be on Game Pass day and date, because that is the whole Xbox model. I think it would be quite tough for them internally to start justifying why certain of their games aren't now coming day and date. So,
oh no, I'm sure that announcement's coming on Thursday. Like, I mean, we will look like idiots now if it doesn't. But I think that announcement's definitely coming.
No, so I do agree with that. I think that will be the case. All of these games will be day and date. But I do think that there is an argument for some of them to be kind of, as we were talking about PC ports of PlayStation games. After a certain amount of time, if your model of income for those games is Game Pass subscriptions, you know, Doom Eternal is not going to get people to sign up to Xbox Game Pass in a year's time, because it'll be an old game by then. So in that point, why wouldn't you just let it be sold on other consoles and thereby make your money, like continue making money?
It's for the same reason though that Horizon Zero Dawn wasn't ported to the Xbox. It was ported to PC. Do you know what I mean? It's not quite as direct a rival, you know?
Well, yeah, in one sense. I mean, it totally is a rival in another sense, but yeah, like not within the console space. I don't know. I mean, that couldn't you argue that's just PlayStation being backward?
Oh, I think you can definitely fucking argue that. Well, and I think you can definitely argue that. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but is it also there that PlayStation understand that their whole business model is about selling consoles? PlayStation have been upfront about that. Both their hardware strategy and their mergers and acquisitions strategy is all about making really good console exclusives that people will come and buy a system for. That's not really what Xbox are trying to do. Xbox try to get you in the door. The internet skews this kind of thing, right? Because people do get angry about this irrationally, but there's no real reason, I don't think, that an Xbox player would be upset that a game that came day and date to Game Pass a year later is available on PlayStation. And for Xbox, that's just more money that they are likely to not actually make directly on game sales because of Game Pass. Then they get to say, if you want it on PlayStation, that's fine, but you'll have to pay $70 for it, you know, and Xbox will be taking their cut from that. It's not a done deal, but from this statement, like including some new titles in the future that will be exclusive to Xbox and PC players, maybe they're talking about quite small things there, you know, maybe they're talking about...
I almost think it would be the other way around, like it would be like a small thing that might come to PlayStation and not the big stuff, you know? Like I'm almost seeing it the total opposite way. I just feel like there you
would say in that scenario, including most new titles that will come exclusively to Xbox, and then there's an understanding that some may come elsewhere, but they're saying some will be exclusive. Yeah, maybe on Thursday this will all become clear. I agree with you, though. I think we'll get Game Pass information about existing titles, and we'll get some clarity about when things are going to arrive there, and I think we'll get a bit of an update on what Bethesda are actually working on. So I would disagree. Like, I imagine that we could see Starfield, but I don't think we'll get a big trailer or anything. I think they'll kind of be like, remember Starfield? That's coming too, you know? But beyond that, I don't think we're getting any real solid information at this point.
No, but real question right now. It's 3 years from now. This acquisition is no longer a new thing. Fallout 5 is coming out. Do you think that within another 3 years of that, there is a PS5 version? Do you think there's a PS5 version of that game at any point?
Yes, that's what I think. I know you don't.
Hard no from me.
Well, tune in 6 years' time and find out who won.
All right, Lewis, news item number 3. Sticking with Xbox, and it seems some Xbox gamers are now able to stream PC games to their console via a test version of Microsoft's Edge browser. Edge is a Chromium browser, which means that it can run browser apps like those for Discord and even Stadia, hilariously, but also those for GeForce Now. And for those of you that don't know, GeForce Now is a streaming service that allows you to stream supported games from Steam and Epic Games Store that the player already owns. So if you buy a game on Steam and it's supported by GeForce Now, you can stream that game wherever. As a bit of a weird side effect of this, if you own GeForce Now and you own a copy of Death Stranding on Steam, a PlayStation console exclusive, through this web browser, you will be able to play that on your Xbox, which is absolutely wild. I'm not sure about the legalities of that or exactly what PlayStation are going to say about it, because I imagine it isn't going to be nothing. But it is incredibly interesting, I think. However, it does seem that as Xbox doesn't currently have mouse and keyboard support yet, and I say yet with a lot of emphasis because I reckon that will probably be coming pretty soon, some games don't play great on the browser, but those with a controller seem to work, which is absolutely wild. Brad Sams over at Thurrott has also said that when xCloud is officially added to web browsers and have browser support, then you will be able to use that as well on your Xbox. Although I'm not really sure why you would need to if you were at your Xbox, but I guess you could stream PC-only Games Pass games, for example. As GeForce Now is available for free, although you can obviously pay to upgrade to better services like including ray tracing support and stuff like that, this seems to be an absolutely incredible thing for Xbox. The updated browser was something that was sort of rumbling under the surface when the Series X was coming out, and some people were saying that some cool stuff could come out of this if Xbox were planning to integrate an Edge browser in the way that they obviously are. And in actual fact, I think that Brad Sams was one of the people that was saying this, and if you're an Xbox fan, Brad Sams is a fantastic follow on Twitter, FYI. But if this is the potential of the Edge browser on Xbox, I don't know why they were so quiet about it, because this is insane and awesome.
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know why they would have been quiet about it. I mean, web browsers on consoles historically have been fucking atrocious.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yes.
Yeah, like just the idea of trying to browse the internet on a console, certainly on an older PlayStation as I remember it, was not fun at all. So yeah, like if they can make this work, if they can bring Edge in and integrate it properly, that's exciting in and of itself, never mind the added capabilities that being a Chromium browser looks like it's going to provide. I think, as you kind of alluded to there, though, the real test of any of this is going to be, will it be permitted? There's been a lot of companies pulling out of GeForce Now over the months. The question to me, in some ways, as much as PlayStation might, raise a hand and ask some questions about the fact that their exclusive games can suddenly be streamed to Xbox consoles, is that I wonder what the actual Xbox ecosystem argument, how does that factor into it? Because if you're streaming Steam games, then you're not playing that game on Game Pass if it's there, Obviously this comes down to what you own and all that stuff, and probably Xbox will simply see they've sold you a console and you're probably a subscriber or you're likely to buy games now and then, so it doesn't really matter. But how would Xbox feel if people started predominantly using their consoles as Steam streaming boxes? A very unlikely scenario, I accept.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, is Steam the real beneficiary of this system? I genuinely don't know. But it's absolutely fascinating. And obviously this is just a testing phase, it seems, for Microsoft just now in Xbox. But man, I'm really, really very interested indeed to see where this ends up. Alright, news item number 4. A couple of PlayStation patents for new controllers have emerged this week. One is for what looks like a new PSVR controller, but that one was absolutely and completely overshadowed by the controller, Lewis, that was literally a banana. And when I say literally, I do not mean figuratively. I mean literally a yellow-skinned piece of fruit banana. Now, just to get the whole banana thing out of the fucking way, in case you've not seen it, the idea is that you would use a, quotes, inexpensive, simple, non-electronic device as a video game peripheral. And the stupid little drawing that came across with this was of someone holding a banana. A camera would then take images of the object in the user's hands and would configure it digitally, I suppose, to be an input device for the PlayStation. Basically, it would be able to tell if you were pressing on the left-hand side of the banana or the right-hand side of the banana. I don't think it would be able to tell very much beyond that, though. Although I don't know how sophisticated these things are, to be honest. And again, while that image of someone holding a banana like a fucking controller was ridiculous, it really absolutely was. I actually think that this is quite an interesting idea on the whole. However, I would not be expecting to play the new God of War on a banana anytime soon.
No, let's hope not. At least that would be awful.
Again, I think it's a cool idea, man. Like, again, it doesn't have to be a banana either. I should say it could be anything. It could be, I don't know, anything with the surface. It could be the back of your phone, I suppose.
Yeah, that kind of idea, I think, is really interesting. I was kind of imagining it in terms of, playing in VR, for example, and having just objects around you that, like, for talking sakes, you've got a can of juice on your desk, you can pick that up and it will recognise it, and then you can use that in the game, rather than it necessarily just being a kind of replacement gamepad. That is what the banana thing seemed to be suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can, escalate to that. Like, I don't see why it wouldn't be able to,
Because I think that could be a really interesting progression of just anything around you can be used in-game. That starts to change what a game even is,
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept we'll see, but again, I wouldn't necessarily see this as something that is indicative of the future of PlayStation or the fact that we're going to see anything from it anytime soon or ever.
Are you telling me I should cancel my banana order, Mark?
Well, no, they're high in potassium lists. They're very good for you. However, the new PSVR controller, which got totally glossed over by this, is actually really, really fucking cool. It is much more in line with what you would expect to see with an Oculus or Valve's Index. Similar shape, all that, and crucially, it would get rid of the fucking ridiculous wand, a controller that I absolutely detest. It will also have haptic feedback, like the DualSense, which was also mentioned by Jim Ryan a couple of weeks ago in his interview. And it looks like it will also be able to track fingers, potentially, much like Valve's Index. I don't know if you saw the demonstrations of that, where people were moving individual fingers and it was moving in-game as well. And if that feature is able to be taken onto console, that's really cool. I think that's an excellent, excellent feature for VR. And it also seems as though the haptic feedback might be able to be finger specific, basically, which could mean that textures and things like that could be translated to your hands more easily. Again, this got totally glossed over by the fucking banana, but the PSVR controller, which might actually be a thing, is very cool. I'm not saying that any of this is necessarily going to happen, because patents are exceptionally hit and miss when it comes to this sort of thing. And it also sounds very, very expensive, but it is extremely cool. PlayStation also surprise announced 6 PSVR games this week, including After the Fall, I Expect You to Die 2, Wracked, Song in the Smoke, Zenith, and Doom 3 VR, which was obviously the big one, which is also, interestingly, a Bethesda game, but that's probably a conversation for a different day. But Doom 3 was definitely the big one coming to PSVR. PlayStation clearly think that VR is part of their future, it's part of the model going forward, and honestly it's just nice to see it having continued support, you know what I mean? They've not given up on it. The original is obviously sold well enough that it merits this continued support, and I'm glad to see that the industry's still pushing VR forward, because I think that ultimately one day it could be extremely, extremely cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Mark. To see PlayStation continue to support it is one thing, and that's really good, but also support it in the ways that they need to by kind of following what other VR companies are doing and making sure that new controller is sort of fit for purpose. And you've got to hope that will lead down the line to some other, ideally a wireless or as close to a wireless version of the PSVR headset as is possible. Yeah, it all indicates that Sony are at least thinking and putting some work into it and not just kind of pumping out another cheap headset and taking some easy sales,
Yeah, that wand was like a pre-existing peripheral as well. This is Sony's first designed VR controller, which is very, very cool. Very much looking forward to seeing this. Alright, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, Maquette has come out this week, currently sitting at a 71 on PS5 and a 69 on PC, which, with all the will in the world, is a bit underwhelming for something that I was quite looking forward to. It seems as though they have leaned pretty heavily into this world within a world idea, and I suppose how much you like it is going to depend on how well you think they pulled that off. But I think that it's interesting, and I always find it good when indie games are allowed to explore these weird ideas. Sometimes they don't pull it off, but I always think that weird stuff like this is worth exploring, And don't be a slave to that Metacritic. It's currently free on PlayStation Plus right now. So if you're at all interested, you should absolutely still give it a go. And even if you're not, give it a go anyway. It's free. What have you got to lose?
Yep, exactly. Couldn't say it fairer myself yet.
Alright, shout out number 2. Watch Dogs Legion's multiplayer has been delayed indefinitely on PC due to bugs. The console version of Watch Dogs Legion's multiplayer will still release on March the 9th, but even that comes with a couple of caveats. Ubisoft have made this statement on Twitter.
We've identified an issue in the PC version that can cause the game to crash for players with certain GPUs. The team is working on fixing the issue as quickly as possible, and in the meantime, we've made the decision to wait to launch the PC version until this is fixed. We will communicate the new launch date as soon as possible. We've also identified an issue that can cause the game to crash during the tactical op. Therefore, we've made the decision to launch it on Xbox, PlayStation and Stadia on March 23rd. PlayStation 4 and 5 will have limited in-game text chat at launch, and we're working on a fix for this, which will also be coming on March 23rd.
Honestly, I think that this game could work quite well as a multiplayer. It seems to be mostly focused on co-op, which is good, and I think that marries well into the mechanics of the game and marries well into the single-player campaign as well. But they have to get it right at launch, or people will so easily bounce off this. There's 1,001 other things that they could be playing, you know? And this sounds like they're not launching this in one fell swoop. They're launching this a little bit at a time, and I'm not sure how that's going to play, basically.
Yeah, they really have to hope the mods that are available on the systems that they're available to play on at launch capture people's attention. You know, they really need people to be talking about this, so that when that PC version drops, those PC players are like, I have got to be on this now, I can't wait for it. So wait and see. Doesn't feel like a dead cert that will happen.
It certainly does not, unfortunately. Alright, shout out number 3. Troy Leavitt, the designer of the upcoming Harry Potter game Hogwarts Legacy, has resigned after it was revealed that his YouTube channel was full of just the worst alt-right garbage you have ever seen. Some of his videos included just general anti-SJW stuff, using SJW in a non-ironic way as well, which I just super love. A lot, and I mean a lot, of anti-feminist stuff, a lot of defending Gamergaters, specific videos as well about Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn. There was also a video called Dude is Disposable, which got real men's rights real fucking quick. There was also a video about the myth of the male gaze in video games, which again really quickly devolved into defending objectifying women in video games. Then there was one that was just straight up called in praise of cultural appropriation, which, I mean, probably don't need to say too much more about that, right?
Let's not, no.
Let's not. Good idea, Lewis. There was also 2 videos as well. One defending John Lasseter, who was the co-founder of Pixar and who left Disney in 2017 after admitting to sexual misconduct in the workplace. But good old Troy thought it was worth making a video defending that man. And there was also one called Bushnell Did Nothing Wrong with regards to Nolan Bushnell, the co-founder of Atari, who was found to have created a very toxic work environment at Atari for the women who worked there. Lovely gentleman. Anyway, this obviously comes off the back, or not long after certainly, J.K. Rowling has made some pretty bad transphobic comments which also cast a shadow over this game. Apparently, according to Leavitt himself, WB knew about his YouTube channel, but didn't think it would be a problem somehow. And I think that says something quite worrying about Avalanche Software, who is the dev that is working on the Harry Potter game. If they knew about this and thought that was all good, I wonder what that says about the culture at their workplace. However, they have announced that there will be a trans-inclusive character creator within the game, going against J.K. Rowling's absolutely nonsense transphobia. Also, if you end up reading her Medium thing, it reads, as someone who is a professional writer, as quite reasonable and level-headed. I would encourage you to do even a modicum of research on any claim that she makes on that, because it is largely bollocks. However, it is good that the devs have included trans-inclusive character creators into the game. I mean, I think that is, if nothing else, a good fucking gesture to the trans community. But it does feel a little bit hollow at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, fair play to the developers who are still there and working on this, because
I actually feel really sorry for them, because they probably started the development of this game way before any of this bullshit ever happened.
Yeah.
Never thought that any of this was going to be a problem. We're probably really fucking excited, some of them, to work on a Harry Potter game. Maybe some of them really connected with those novels when they were kids, and then just this tirade of bullshit is just dropped upon them.
That's it. Like, their own personal connections to Harry Potter are one thing. Also, just the career effect of working on a major IP, one that is as beloved as Harry Potter is. You know, a lot of those people were probably really excited. I think that the information about this trans character creation feels very much to me like a dev studio trying to get some positive, inclusive news about the game out there. But honestly, and in fair play to them for doing so and trying to make this game work and trying to puncture a lot of the negativity around it. But I think that the damage is done, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I did say that it felt hollow. I sort of want to walk that back a little bit. It is definitely good that they are doing this, like, without a shadow of a fucking doubt. Being more inclusive is definitely a good thing. It's just that knowing that the studio knew about this guy,
that's it. It's
but
like,
then they're doing this trans-inclusionary character creation, but they also knew about that guy.
Yeah.
It's a bit well, what are your actual values here, you know?
Definitely some questions to be answered around it, 100%.
And shout out number 4, Lewis. Victura, the publishers of 6 Days in Fallujah. See, after the trans stuff, you thought it was going to get lighter, but nope. Have now done a total 180 and have said that their game is inseparable from politics. This was totally contradictory to the statement that came out only a couple of weeks ago when I had a massive fucking rant about it on this podcast. They did release a statement on Twitter basically backtracking, but not actually admitting that they were backtracking. If you really want to read it, you can go and find it yourselves. I certainly won't be linking to it in the show notes. I certainly won't be making Lewis read it. I think we'll do us all a favour there. If you really want to read the statement, you can go and look it up on Twitter. But I would actually encourage you all not to bother doing that and instead look up Imran Khan's article called "The creators of 6 Days in Fallujah think we're fucking morons and they are absolutely marketing to us this way." And I think that says just about all that needs to be said about why I think that this game is fucking bullshit. Yep. So, yeah. I think I've already given this game too much oxygen, Lewis, and I'd quite like to move on. I've just decided as well that I refuse to end our news section on such a fucking down note. So, surprise shout out number 5, Lewis. Xbox are celebrating International Women's Day, which was yesterday as we were recording this, and Women's History Month by doing like a whole bunch of cool shit about women in video games. And they've wrote this whole big huge blog post about it, and we'll link to that over on the show notes at PlayersToo.com. They also done a similar thing for Black History Month last month, which we should definitely have highlighted at the time but didn't, so we're doing that now as well. So there's 2 very awesome links about cool stuff that Xbox are doing to celebrate women in video games and people of colour in video games, and you should definitely go and check them out instead of going checking out this fucking Fallujah shit or this alt-right wanker who worked on Harry Potter. Alright, Liz, time for a beer, and then we will be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. And the Topic of the Week this week, Lewis, is in honour of the most formative console, I think, of both of our lives. It is the PlayStation 2's 21st birthday, Lewis, which makes me feel very fucking old.
Yep, me too. Yeah, this week has marked the 21st birthday of the initial release of the PS2. It never quite reached Europe and North America until a few months later, back when worldwide releases were even harder to pull off than they are during a pandemic year. But yeah, it's 21 years since the launch of the PS2, and I think, yeah, it's been a long day, a long week, long month, and I just thought it'd be fun to just shoot the shit about how good the PS2 was, Mark.
Well, it was certainly very important for the both of us, I would guess, yeah?
I think so, yeah. I was thinking back earlier, so it was my second proper console. You know, I'd had a couple of old Segas that had been, you know, that were hand-me-downs, basically.
Yep, same. Yep.
I was bought the PS1 for Christmas. The PS2 was the first time, I think, that I kind of really actively was like, I want that thing. I want that console for these reasons, you know? I think I got a PS1 because, like, my older cousin had one, and so I just knew that what it was. But the PS2 felt like the first time as a gamer, like that was the beginning of like a nascent gamer identity, I think, for both of us, when you started to actually think about the games you wanted to play and what they, you know, what was good and bad about different games, and kind of finding out, you know, what you wanted to do, like what games interested you. And that felt like it all started to come together in the PS2 era. Is that kind of how you feel about it as well?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I was very similar to you, and I think I had a Sega Mega Drive handed down to me, and I think that you were exactly the same. Then the same Christmas as you, I also got a PlayStation 1. And then I remember you getting your PlayStation 2 because your birthday comes a month before my birthday in the year.
Yep.
And I got mine a month later subsequently. But I remember you getting yours, and I have no recollection of me getting mine because the first time I saw yours was the first time that I saw a PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And my overwhelming memory of it was, I can't believe how small it is, weirdly. Which I think in the face of the PlayStation 5, which is an absolutely gigantic monster of a thing, it's a weird thought to remember, you know?
Yeah.
I also remember thinking that it was the most futuristic looking thing that I'd ever seen in my life as well. And looking back, it's like a fucking black square box. Like, it's absolutely nothing to look at.
Yeah, but it had that sweet, twistable PlayStation logo for whether or not you were standing it vertically or horizontally.
So it did.
So nice.
So it did. I think the PS3 still had that.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Just even that rattly old disc tray that you got in that original PS2, just that sliding out.
Just the cheapest fucking plastic in the world, yeah. And it came out as well, like it didn't flip up. Well, it came out and it was like, this isn't cheap shit. This is really expensive.
The fear that how easily that could have been snapped. You know?
Absolutely.
I think that's the thing as well to bear in mind. We were still effectively children when this came out. And
we weren't effectively children. We absolutely were children.
We were about 10.
About 10, yeah, exactly. And then subsequently as well, this console took us through our sort of formative years from 10 to, I guess it would have been like 16, is that right?
Pretty much. PS3 launched in 2006 or 7, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it must have been
there or thereabouts.
Somewhere about there. So, yeah, this is definitely where we, or certainly me, I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine it's the same. Like, as you said, built an identity as a gamer or built this as a hobby, as something that I definitely want to keep doing this. Like, this is a good thing that I enjoy a lot and I want to keep doing it, you know?
Yeah. I think 100% that as well. I totally agree with that. And I think that partly comes, not just because of the age that we had got to at this point and you're just a bit more aware of yourself and what you're interested in and stuff. But more than that, really, was that it was a phenomenal console that just had this seemingly endless library of amazing games to check out. And to me, it's a real shame that it's still really difficult to get a lot of PS2 games. It's too difficult to play them today. I was reading something just the other day about emulation for PS2 getting a bit better, but... Yeah,
there was a whole thing about that, actually.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes over at PlayersToo.com, but yeah, emulation for PS2 has got real interesting.
Yeah, and if we could get back to some of these phenomenal games, that would be... It's always interesting to me because as we've said plenty of times, we were never Nintendo boys growing up. It just wasn't as big a thing in the UK, and the PS2, or the PlayStation, generally was much bigger. But you hear a lot of people in the gaming industry talk about old Nintendo systems with such reverence, and I just really wish that we could now be the generation going, look at how great these PS2 games were, kids, check these out because they're so good, so many of them.
Oh man, absolutely. Do we want to get into some of our favourite games here? Because I can absolutely tell you right now, the first one that I want to talk about, that I want to tell the kids about, Lewis, and that is Burnout 3 Takedown, which to this day, Lewis, I maintain might be the best racing game ever made. Despite even other Burnout games that came after it, Burnout 3 Takedown might still be the best racing game ever made. Yeah,
it's one of the only racing games that I've ever thoroughly enjoyed and played for a long time. The whole series on PS2 was pretty special, but I think you're right that Takedown kind of stands apart as being the genesis point of a lot of this, that
the sensation of speed while driving a car in a video game, I don't think has ever been captured quite as well as it was in Burnout 3 or the Burnout series in general. I think that's really what it done very, very well indeed. But as you said, Burnout 3 Takedown was where that began,
And I think that's the case for a lot of franchises that were around on PS2, that they kind of, I'll come on to the most obvious one in a wee second, but they kind of started out what that game or that franchise or even that type of game is now. And the most obvious one I think to talk about is GTA 3.
Absolutely.
And by extension Vice City and San Andreas. It changed everything.
But by extension, all open world games.
Exactly.
This is where the open world was born,
Yeah.
It's weird to think, looking back, that we were there for that as an extent. I remember playing GTA 3 and I remember seeing demos and stuff like that of GTA 3 and reading magazines, even as a kid, because we read the official PlayStation magazine every month for a ludicrous amount of time, and just thinking, well, there's no way that it can actually do that. You can't do that. Obviously, that's crazy. But the PS2 was just the perfect marriage of the available hardware at the time and the fact that it ran on discs, which had a lot more capacity than cartridges. it was able to do this. I mean, the load times were fucking horrendous, but it was able to build like a 3D open world, and it was the first real stab at that. And quite frankly, GTA 3 fucking knocked it out of the park at the first attempt. Fair play to them.
Yeah, like for anyone, much younger than us, I suppose, who doesn't understand that before GTA 3, these were 2D top-down games, and now this, the biggest franchise in entertainment, basically, is what GTA is today. Like, that all changed with this PS2 game, and like you say, to wring that game and those games, the other GTA games on PS2, out of that power that hardware had, is really impressive. But the thing that always sticks with me as well is that if you played them now, they probably wouldn't feel like much, but back then GTA 3 felt enormous, and San Andreas felt astronomically big.
Yeah, San Andreas is the one I really remember playing a lot, but the holy trinity, I would say, of GTA games, GTA 3, San Andreas and Vice City, were absolutely amazing. And I would actually disagree with you a little bit. I think if you went back and played those games today, they were so mad and just good fun. In the way that GTA still is, like a compliment to Rockstar as well, that they seem to have continued that heart and soul from back then. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the GTAs before 3 were a bit different in their sort of vibe, but since 3 onwards, like they've really kept that heart and soul of what I recognise a Grand Theft Auto game to be. And yeah, the PS2 is where that was born,
Absolutely, yeah. What are some other games then that were important to you from back in this period?
Well, Metal Gear Solid 3 came out on the PlayStation 2, Lewis, and that is simply one of my favourite games ever.
Absolutely.
Simply one of my favourite games ever. As did Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, which I think at the time I saw as a bit of a disappointment because I didn't get to play as Solid Snake, or didn't get to play Solid Snake for very long, I should say. And you were this new character, and I was like, what's this? But in actual fact, I played that game so much as a kid. Like, I remember playing it so much. Resident Evil 4 as well. I know that a lot of people associate that with being a GameCube game more than being a PlayStation 2 game, but again, we weren't Nintendo boys. We didn't have a GameCube growing up. We had the PS2, and to me that is a PS2 game. You know what I mean? My memories of playing that game is on the PlayStation 2, and it was absolutely fucking brilliant. It was so good. Man, there's just loads and loads and loads of stuff, like Time Splitters, for example, man. Like, I know that there's been rumblings that should come back for years and years and years, and to be honest with you, I don't even know what a fucking Time Splitters game looks like in 2021, Lewis. But back then, that was so good. It was so good and had so much character, and it was so fun, and yet mechanically tight as anything. Incredible guns, like such a good couch co-op story and multiplayer. Like, it was specifically thinking about Time Splitters 2 and Future Perfect. Absolutely fucking brilliant games, man. And even thinking about, this was the age of Guitar Hero as well, which I played so much of back in the day, man. I played so much of that, and I really enjoyed it. I remember specifically playing in a game store, which was in Sucky Hall Street in Glasgow. It's now shut, sadly. But I remember sitting playing this game for one of the first times. It must have been on this couch, and I had like a crowd around me watching me play this game for the first time, and I wasn't even very good at it, right? But I think I personally must have sold about 4 or 5 copies of Guitar Hero and that guitar that day, because there was just a whole bunch of people. And I just remember that about the game so much. Like, we had one in our school as well, and people used to have like battles and shit with them. Like, it was just such a weird phenomenon at the time about music games, Oh man, there's so much. Like, I could go on for days. Like, honestly, I could go on for days about PlayStation 2 games. What about you, man? You need to shut me up. What about you?
Well, I mean, obviously a lot of ours overlap. There just a few other games and series to chuck in. One that we've talked about at length before, so I won't labour just now, but the Prince of Persia trilogy that was on PS2 was such an enormous thing, particularly the Sands of Time. But that whole trilogy that came off the back of that was just absolutely, foundational for that kind of like action platformer game. It gave birth to Assassin's Creed effectively, which, still is this enormous colossal force in gaming. I mean, hopefully this remake is going to be worth playing. I have my doubts, but
sure hope so.
Those originals were so great and so surprising. I still remember the ad campaign for the Sands of Time, and I remember thinking that I wasn't going to enjoy it, and I was kind of coaxed into playing it and just fell in love with it. And I think that is a big thing from this PS2 generation as well. Listeners hopefully are getting a bit of a sense from the games that we're talking about just the breadth of stuff that we were playing at that point. Like, you were just willing to try so many things, and so were developers. There was so much coming out. And on that, because we don't talk about it much, but I could not talk about the PS2 without talking about Pro Evolution Soccer, which I would play every single year. We don't talk about sports games much because neither of us play sports games really anymore, but for that half decade or whatever it was, playing Pro Evolution Soccer, particularly for me, was, a daily occurrence. You could barely point at a day where I wouldn't have had some sort of match on Pro Evolution Soccer. I used to play it with my dad, I used to play it with you, I played it with everyone. I adored it. I have so many strong memories. And just feeding into that really quickly are two other games that we do talk about a lot, but Tekken and Mortal Kombat, maybe more so Mortal Kombat on the PS2 era. When you go.
Well, this was the 3D versions, wasn't
it? Exactly.
This was Deadly Alliance and what was it? Deception.
Deception, and sure there was another one, but yeah, like
Armageddon, maybe.
Yeah, that must have been PS2. Yeah, those games, and Tekken Tag Tournament, which was one of the very first PS2 games.
Yes. Christ.
Like, for us as big fighting game fans, and particularly up till that point, big Tekken fans, up at that moment we'd played Tekkens 1 through 3 extensively, and Tekken Tag Tournament dropping, at that point it was everyone is available to play. You had all your dream characters there.
I get to go 2 characters at once.
Yeah, the idea of playing as Kazuya and Devil at the same time was just astronomical. That is the thing that I will always remember, particularly the early days of the PS2. It's interesting just looking at lists of games and how many of them did come out in those first few years. Games that just felt completely revolutionary, and that if you ever 20 years from now asked one of us about games that we loved, PS2 games would immediately be coming to mind.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, I cannot let this conversation end without mentioning Shadow of the Colossus, which again remains one of my favourite games ever made. The remake is definitely what everyone should go and play. The control layout is just way better, and it just looks stunning for the minds of people in 2021. But when that game first came out on the PlayStation 2, it was like nothing else that had ever come before it. It truly was revolutionary. I just had to say that. And yes, Lewis was that guy playing Pro Ev when everyone else was playing FIFA.
Till the day I die, Mark.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will have to call it a day there. Thank you for letting us pontificate endlessly about our love for the PlayStation 2.
This could honestly have been the whole show.
This could easily have been the whole show, so count your blessings. Alright, I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, 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 really helps us out. I know I say this twice a week, every week, but it genuinely does not become less important on a weekly basis. And thank you so much to anyone that's already given us a review. It really does only take you 5 seconds, so if you could do that for us, it genuinely would mean a lot. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Oxenfree. Still not started it yet, but once Persona 5 is out of the way, Lewis, the world is my oyster. I have no idea what's going to happen after that. I just need to get over that hill, I think, now.
I think that's fair enough. Focus on that for now. Yeah, I've bought it on PlayStation because of that cheap deal we mentioned last week, which I think expires today, so that might be too late if you've not bought it yet.
It's still not an expensive game, even if you don't get it for 79 pence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, under £1 is a particularly good deal. But I have it installed now on my PS5 and I will look to start. I will say next week, but I probably won't for 3 weeks as usual.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.